Hi, developers. I'm Pete Brown, and today I want to talk to you about some tips and techniques for getting your app through the certification process in the Microsoft Store and Windows. So I'll start today with some common certification blockers and some of the issues that we see that most applications will run into at one point or another. And from there, we'll look at a few specialized situations, as well as tips for navigating the certification process itself. Now, these apply to applications regardless of the technology that you're using, whether they're UWP or PWA or Win32 or something else. And also, these are information directly from the product team. So we're going to be basing this right off the data that we use for the certification process. So let's start with a few of the common certification blockers. So fully 35% of the certification failures that we see for new applications coming into the store are related to these 5 items. These items are more application and listing metadata issues than they are application code issues. So these are easy to fix, usually by modifying the submission or by updating data that's in Partner Center. Let's start with the privacy policy. Privacy policy is something that I know a lot of us can be a little scared of creating and working with, but it's really there to help and protect and reassure customers so they know what the application is collecting and how they can use it. The privacy policy does need to have a URL that is functional at the time of submission. So it's not something that you want to stand up later on. It needs to be there when you submit your package to the store. And it needs to be specific to the product or developer. You may be tempted to skip the privacy policy or just grab somebody else's privacy policy and point to that. Don't do that. You're going to need one that is specific to you and to your application. Now, you may not have a website because applications don't always require a website. So if you don't have a place already to stand up your privacy policy, just host it on GitHub. That's what I do for my applications that I have in the store. This is a super easy way to have a secure URL so that people can access the privacy policy without you having to go and host it someplace else. Now, if you don't have a team of besuited lawyers to build this privacy policy for you, then you can use any number of the different online privacy policy generators that give you a starting point very similar to what you'll see for open source application licenses and project licenses, and that you can take and then modify from there. Or, and here's a great tip, you don't have to sound like it's coming from a giant company or it's in legalese. Just describe in plain English what you collect from the user and what you do with that information and what the user can do about that information collection. And that's really all you need in there. Now, another issue that we run across are different URLs that are listed in the store. So anytime you have support links or developer websites or other URLs listed in the metadata in the app, these need to be valid URLs. So bear with me a second. You know when you go to a website and it makes you go and type the email address in multiple times to confirm that as though it's like some secret nuclear bunker code or something? Well, it's done because we often have typos in these critical pieces of information that are going into these sites. So it's the same thing with the URLs here. I recommend that you take that URL and copy it back out of Partner Center and paste it into your browser and verify that it's actually working and that there are no typos in there and that it pasted in correctly, right? Also, you need to make sure that these URLs are all available and active at the time of submission, and that they are going to be continually available and active throughout the certification process, and then obviously throughout the point in which the application is in the store, because we're going to test those and we want to make sure that they are actually up and running. Another interesting one is screenshots. Screenshots are there to entice the user in the store and to show them what the application can do. But they need to be screenshots of the application in use and of that actual application. Now, sometimes you get screenshots of unrelated applications, so somebody can just put something in that field, or we'll get a screenshot of like somebody's cat or something. Those aren't probably the best things to submit with your application. I mean, if the application's about cats, okay. If it's not about cats, you can always tweet those images to me. I'm fine with that. But they need to show the actual application in action as it will be used, because we want the user to be able to make an informed decision. And we're going to do the same kind of verification that a user would do. We're going to look and make sure that what we see in the screenshots and what are in the application match up, and the application actually does what it says on the tin. Another important piece is related to test credentials. Some applications require login information, usernames and passwords and whatnot for access to functionality in the application. So when you submit your application to the store, we need to have valid and up-to-date test credentials that give us access to all of the app features that you are describing in your product listing. And that's a key point there, is to make sure that we have access to everything that you list as a feature in your application. And so nothing seems broken or nothing seems inaccessible to the test team. And then finally, make sure that those credentials remain valid for the whole duration of certification, especially when you go and submit new versions of the app. You need to make sure that those credentials still work so that we can still use them to test the application as part of that certification process. Another one that's really easy to confuse is mixed reality support. I'll be honest, I think we could be a little clearer here in the documentation and on our website, because everybody wants their applications to run in mixed reality, even if it's just a flat app type of process. But these options for in the store are really for applications that take advantage of the 3D and spatial nature of a mixed reality device like HoloLens or any of the other headsets out there. And so only check this option if your application really does make use of that functionality. Otherwise, we're going to go looking for that functionality in your application when you submit it. And when we don't find it, we're going to assume that something is broken. So that's it for the common situations. Let's talk a little bit about a few specialized situations for certain types of applications. The first is related to free trials. You want to be extra clear with your customers and in your store listing about what is provided for free as part of the trial and what is provided as paid functionality. We don't want to mislead the customer here. We want them to be happy with the choice that they made when they went and acquired your application in the store. You want to be, again, extra clear with them on this, because an informed customer is a good customer here in this case. You want to let them know what the trial period is, as well as any limitations of that trial period. If you have an image editing app and that application doesn't allow saving, or it's going to save images with a big watermark on it, you should be clear about that in the application listing so that nobody is surprised by that when they go and download the application. Another is related to in-app purchases. Now, this is something that can be somewhat obscure because it's based upon the different legal requirements for different jurisdictions around the world. So there are very broad legal definitions of what an in-app purchase is. So for example, if your application relies on a subscription service that is acquired outside of the application, that still counts as an in-app purchase and needs to be disclosed as part of the age ratings, as well as the application metadata that's being submitted. So if you rely on that subscription service, even if you don't acquire the subscription through the application, you need to indicate that the application has in-app purchases. And that helps the user make informed decisions, and it also helps you comply with the legal requirements around the world. Another is related to assets in the application. Now, we know that when the application has been in the store for a while, been under development for a while, you can kind of start to accumulate things in the app package like an episode of Hoarders or something, right? So if you have default images or old versions of images, or some image that's like .final.v05 or something like that in there, get rid of those types of extra things that your application's not using, so that they don't bloat up the package, and so that we don't look at it and wonder where all these images are being used and kind of what the purpose is. Same if you have any of those default images, the ones with the X that are through them, make sure you remove those from your app package as well, so we don't think you forgot to do something. And then you may have redundant packages or DLLs or something that is no longer being used by the application. Make sure you clean that stuff out as well, because this will reduce the size of your package and also will reduce the number of things that we have to test as part of the certification process. So that's it for those few special situations. Let's talk a little bit now on some tips for navigating the certification process itself. The first, and this could be really obvious, but run the WAC tool, the Windows App Certification Kit tool. This is a tool that we provide that makes it easy for you to run many of the same tests that we would run in an automated fashion, so that you can make sure that your application is using the approved APIs and the package is legitimate and version information is correct, and like all of those different things that you want to make sure that the application will go through the testing process cleanly on are all things that can be tested through WAC. Now, of course, there are still manual steps that we do as part of the certification process, but this will at least get all of those kind of the low-hanging fruit out of the way to begin with. As developers, I know me especially, I hate contacting support folks, right? So I'm always looking for what is my shortest path to resolution of whatever issue I'm running into. And I'm sure most developers out there agree. So one of the things you can do when you contact store support is make sure that you provide your seller ID as well as your product store ID at that time of that initial contact. Include that right from the beginning, and feel free to repeat it in other messages so that we can make sure we have that information available to us and we're able to get the shortest path to resolution of the issue. Another one is the email address. I know I'm going through a process right now of having to change my personal email address pretty much everywhere because one of the services I was using no longer supports free custom domains. And I just don't have an interest in paying custom domains everywhere, right? But I have to change this. I have a list of literally hundreds of places where I need to change my email address. And the store partner center is one of those places. If I forget to do that there, then there's no way for Partner Center to contact me in the future if there are certification problems or if there are any other places where the store team needs to reach out. So make sure that you always have a valid email address. Even if you haven't submitted an application in a little while, make sure you have a valid email address in your Partner Center account so that we can contact you as needed. And so with that, I'd like to say thank you for listening in here with me today. We're really looking forward to your next submission into the store and see what kind of wonderful new applications that you bring. Now, it's really easy to get started. If you haven't already, go to partner.microsoft.com, go into the Partner Center, and you can create your account, or you can use that to submit applications to your existing account. Follow through with these tips, as well as a lot of the online guidance we have that will help you out. So I've been Pete Brown. Thank you very much.